Hi, I'm Madeline Robison, and today I will be presenting on the history of air pollution post the American Industrial Revolution. So first, let's talk about the American Revolution and what is the American Revolution, what caused all the air pollution from the American Industrial Revolution. So technically, the Industrial Revolution in America started around 1790, and it was in full scale around 1820. This included business expansion, capital investment, and rise of corporations. There was a huge movement from agriculture to industry, which is what industrialization means. Big movement of farm labor to mass producing industrial labor in 1790. 90% of the labor force in America worked on farms where wages were a fraction of the wages in factory work. And by 1890, only 2.6 of the labor force worked on farms due to this industrialization process. So kind of why industrialization happened and kind of the cycle of that. There's increased productivity in industry, which made people want to move from farming to industry, which then led to them making higher wages and then having a higher standard of living. And then there was a greater demand for material goods due to that higher standard of living, and then the increased need for industrialization occurred. So air pollution and the Industrial Revolution. How does air pollution relate to the Industrial Revolution? At the start and for the majority of the Industrial Revolution, there was no formal legislation or ordinances in city, state, or federal level enacted in the United States until 1881, where the cities started to enact legislation. There was an immense amount of air pollution emitted due to the Industrial Revolution, due to industry, due to the use of coal-powered things. And with this like reduced quality of the air, there were concerns about public health, and there were a lot of complaints by citizens about hindered breathing and stinging eyes, and just the air quality in general in urban areas. So the first air pollution established in the United States was among cities. The first ever, as I was talking about before, was 1881, where Cincinnati and Chicago established smoke ordinances due to the complaints among citizens and the terrible quality of air that they were experiencing. The next was in 1904, when Philadelphia limits the use or limits smoke in fuels, chimneys, and open spaces, and then those were the extent of the city ordinances. And then in 1947, California as a state enacted it in air pollution control in all California counties, where each county would have its own regulations on air quality. So finally, in 1955, this was when the first federal regulations took place. The first one, called the Air Pollution Control Act. This kind of gave money to research about air pollution, and nothing really came of this in terms of reducing air pollution, but this was the first step of the United States government really recognizing that there was a problem and kind of throwing some money at that problem. And then in 1960, this was the first amendment to the Air Pollution Control Act, which extended the funding. And then in 1962, there was enforced the act and called for more research on air pollution. And then 5 years later, in 1967, the Air Quality Act came about. This looked at the extended research of the Air Pollution Control Act and also limited automobile emissions. So there were emission standards for automobiles. And then in 1969, further amendments to this act to increase research on fuel efficiency and like automobile emission standards. And then in 1970, the Clean Air Act came about, which basically rewrote the Air Quality Act and created the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States. This created air quality standards for stationary sources of pollution as well as new state regulations. So this one was a really big one that had really comprehensive of what it was. So some more information on the Clean Air Act. There were 5 criteria pollutants focused in the act. These included carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, suspended particulate matter, and photochemical oxidants. And then in 1990, they amended this Clean Air Act, and it included 6 pollutants, which were all the pollutants listed, as well as lead and ozone. Um, they also started the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, which made standards for each of these pollutants in terms of concentrations of how much could be emitted and be in an area at any certain time. There are many notable air pollution events that took place in United States history that led to the creation of the city, state, and federal regulations on air pollution. First, we're going to talk about St. Louis smog. So, in the mid 20th century, every year in St. Louis, they would burn coal to heat the city. And this led to St. Louis eventually having what was known as the worst air quality in the country. St. Louis was kind of known for that. And there was one incident that kind of catalyzed St. Louis to enact regulation about air pollution, but this is known as Black Tuesday, which happened on November 28th, 1939. And this occurred where the air was so polluted, it looked like it was the middle of the night, and it was actually the middle of the day. And so this occurrence led the city to enact regulation about air pollution. And then next, we're going to talk about Donora, Pennsylvania. And in October of 1948, a thick smog from a nearby zinc factory traveled over to Donora and remained there for multiple days. This occurred because of a thermal inversion where the air above is warmer than the air below. So the cooler air is trapped, and this creates terrible conditions for air pollution because the air pollution is just trapped within the city. And this was pretty bad because of the 14,000 residents, 6,000 were impacted by the incident and injured by the incident, and then 26 people died from this incident. And this is why this is considered one of the worst or the worst air pollution events in United States history. So continuing on about the notable air pollution events in United States history, we're going to talk about the New York City smog. So New York City was also considered to have one of the worst air qualities in the United States, and incidences in both 1953 and 1963, where an overwhelming amount of smog from industry mixed with stagnant air cost hundreds of lives and impacted many, many people in the area. And there was one incident on Thanksgiving weekend of 1966 where the air quality was so bad the city recommended people to stay inside. The air consisted of mainly carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter from smoke. In this specific incident, up to 200 people were killed. And this incident and the Donora smog incident led to the creation of the Clean Air Act and all the amendments that followed that. So thank you, and that is the end of my presentation.